Welcome to the Property Experts podcast by Fantastic Services, where we interview leading landlords, property developers and investors, architects and interior designers. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Fantastic Services Property Experts. I'm really happy today because I'm joined by two people, and we'll introduce you in a second. I'm joined by two people who make me smile again about property. And we had a little discussion before this stuff here. But before that, I just want to launch into it. Welcome to Tonya and Rea, also known as the Property Twins on Instagram, who's had numerous of offers of going showbiz and a few other things. But in this one here, we're just talking to the people behind the scenes and everything else that goes on. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into property, but not in necessarily the strategy, but a little bit about being in property. So warm welcome to both of you and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, the first thing I always ask is like, how and why did you get into property?
Oh, how and why we got into property. So, I mean, as children, believe it or not, we was really into property from day dot. Our mother used to watch a lot of the property shows, Homes Under the Hammer, location. So we was always obsessed with that dream property and the property search. And so it was kind of the natural route to take. Yeah. So when we were in our early 20s, both of us started as property negotiators right at the bottom of the chain as trainee negs. And that is where it all started.
Wow, and it seems to me like the real cause here was like the same as a lot of others, like myself as well, is like this finished product, like seeing something finished, like, you know, the process of it was secondary. That came later, but the thing that was about seeing this, I made this box pretty in some ways. Is that the correct fashion of it? And like that was the initial idea with it. I wanted to talk to something, because you're both mothers, and it's really interesting because we hear about education, we hear about whether we should go through university, whether we should go through X, Y, Z. And we were talking very briefly before we started, and I was like, it dawned on me, like, we're not taught property in school, and we're not taught money in school. I mean, what do you think of this? I mean, like, we're growing up with a new generation of people. We're growing up with X, Y, Z generations. You've got a new generation on the way as well. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think for both of us, like, school was frustrating. It was a frustrating time. You know, we kind of didn't really belong in like the two boxes that our school would want you to belong in. So you were either sporty or you were very sort of academic, and we weren't either of those things. We were very driven and passionate. I would say we were creative as well. And believers, but, like, you know, we didn't fit into either of those boxes. So for us, we were kind of lost, I would say, in education and at school. And to be totally honest and truthful, we didn't do great at school. You know, we come out with no GCSEs. We had nothing to show for school because we just didn't really fit anywhere. I think if we'd had the opportunity to learn finance and business and how to make money, that would have attracted us and, like, turned our heads and, you know, maybe grasped some attention in us. That, you know, that was the type of thing that would have motivated us. But unfortunately, the way that schooling is, state schooling, they don't really focus on too much on that. And I think that that's a bit of an area of education that's forgotten and lost. And I think there's probably a lot of people like Rea and I out there that, yeah, we have no GCSEs, but we was always going to leave school and go on to be successful because we've got that self-drive. But there's a lot of people there that are probably like us, you know, struggled through school because that wasn't that way of teaching. It was a bit of a frustrating time for us, I would say, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We really believe that they should be teaching this in school. We would love to go into schools and do speeches and talks and topics
learn about money as well. Like, there's no learning about money. Actually, I think that's a big issue in our country as well, is debt and debt management and control. Like, we had no like, you know, warnings or education on that at all. And I think that that's a big problem in our society. You know, people leave school straight away. You know, as soon as they're able to, get into scorecards and overdrafts, and no one really knows how to manage it. We've had to self-teach, you know, we've had to teach ourselves that, but that's another area I think that needs to be looked at, finances and how to look after them.
Well, you're both good examples of it. I mean, you've done well with your property, and it's not because of your Instagram stuff. You've done well in property. I mean, the Instagram and the other things. I believe from you guys, it came kind of later, and it's not the primary thing. It's more like that's more like you guys having fun with it. Am I right in this? I mean, the business as a business is what's interesting for you guys.
Well, that's it. I mean, we were doing this way before Instagram even existed. It didn't exist. I mean, we're in our kind of mid-30s, mid to borderline late 30s. So at the time when we started our property careers, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook. I think it was like
maybe
really
MySpace or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe MySpace. But so for us, it was always about the passion that we had for the career. We've always loved property, and we opened the Instagram page right at a later stage, right towards the end of our careers, I'd say actually, just to document our property journey and our adventures. And
it's a bit of fun more than anything.
Yeah, and it seems to have taken off, and people like what we do on there. We try to keep it really property related, but yeah, the social media thing definitely came after. It's not like we've jumped on the bandwagon and thought, oh, I'll be a property expert and and get a really cool Instagram following. For us, it's something that's just in us, and it's been in us for years. So yeah, it was more about the career for us, and everything else come after that.
I think you said a good example, and also what we talked about school is like, I like how Gary Vee says it. It's like, I didn't fail school failed me. And I think every one of us who's entrepreneurs is like, it's like, I didn't fail school, school failed me, and because it wasn't targeted for this. And I think, I mean, I have the big thing about entrepreneurs versus startup versus this stuff here. I also think that there's another thing is like, you're not a funded startup with X billion in funding or 10 million in funding on the way to a unicorn. You are just true entrepreneurs who's trying to make a decent, not only just a decent living, but you're trying to build a company here, right? And it's like, I've been in the same boat, and it's the same thing we're talking about versus franchisees versus startups versus funded company versus private equity. Sometimes we're indoctrinated now when we grow up later, we're indoctrinated, oh, you got to do a startup or you got to do this stuff. Well, let's do a business out of who we are if we can. Other than that, it's like, there's nothing wrong in being an employee. There's nothing wrong in being a good number 2 and number 3. There's nothing wrong in being part of it. As I said, like, the whole circle comes around, but it's about who you were at that stage and that particular age group or that particular type of personality, the entrepreneur. I mean, school failed it because it's like, well, why didn't we know it? It was like, what was credit debit? And I mean, the first time you learn about appreciating, depreciating assets. I mean, luckily, you're conscious parents now, so you've got a chance of teaching that to your kids. But I agree with you on the lack of this stuff here. Talking of that, right? One thing that strikes me a lot, and this is what I think you guys have seen it as well. Right now, right? We're for the recording of the podcast, we're sort of almost over the pandemic. We'll see what happens, but we're almost over the pandemic. We've been through this stuff here. There's been an enormous increase in property prices in certain areas. There's been like more demand than has seen forever, and it's been hard to close stamp duties and getting everything sorted. And we'll talk a little bit later about the supply issues of service people. But there's also been an influx, and I've had this discussion with a couple of others. It's like there's this massive FOMO. And that FOMO leads to, I call the explosion of training versus actually the business. I mean, what are you seeing here as well? Because it's one of the things I'm like, whoa, everybody's talking about training on property. I mean, and this podcast is not about training on property. This is about honest discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something we do. We don't say that we train. We're not trying to make money out of what we do or how we've done it. Obviously, there are a lot of people out there that say about the training, the property training. It all looks great, it looks easy, it looks simple, but what we always say is that it's just not. It's not simple, it's not easy. I think it depends on your area as well. For instance, down south where we are, property prices are still really expensive. There isn't the money in it to, buy, renovate, refinance, rent. Those strategies they don't exist here. Not where we are.
You can teach them all day long.
Yeah,
you can charge someone to come and listen to you, but actually then being able to action that and find that property and do it.
It's not as easy as it's not as easy as it sounds. You can go and obviously canvas to everyone in your area, will buy your property for cash. But the bottom line is people are getting over market value for their property. So why are they going to sell to you for cash? They're not. Where we are, that's what we're seeing. And I would quite like to buy property at the moment to renovate and flip, but the market's not really there for it. So, it's easy to follow a strategy and be sold a strategy, but then it's not so easy to put that in place depending on where your market is.
Well, I think that's with everything, but you really touched on something that I think is so interesting on property. Is like, and the reason why I interviewed a couple of guys up from Scotland and from the US and from areas there is like it's a very local thing in some ways, and it's a local thing on that strategy works there locally right now, and then a mile away that strategy might be different.
Yeah.
I think that's what the more I'm learning from this podcast, the more I'm interviewing, the more I hear the same thing you just said, because it's like the strategies are there, it's like, but it's the same in business. Like the strategies are there. You should do your marketing. If your cost per acquisition is lower than your lifetime value, go for it and explode it and do X, Y, Z, and all the strategies are there. The business models are there. Reality is always different.
Reality is different. And also it's like, your area, we know our market. We know right now that the market of our area is hard to flip on. It's hard to get those rental yields you used to get. You either accept that, or you've got to go to a different market that you don't know the area and trust someone. And that's another issue. There's a lot of people out there that are,
claiming to be
experts. I've had clients come to me that have been sold absolute, rubbish returns and investments, like for the properties they've bought are just not the right properties. And they've got people that are selling these flats in Chelmsford from a office up north that's never even been here, and they don't know the market. So it's easy for someone to say this is what you've got to do and this is how easy it is, but also they've got to realise that people starting off have got that one chance to make it with that small pot of money, and it's a big risk, and it's hard, isn't it, to know whether to just go for it and trust someone or play it safe.
Fully agree with you guys. I mean, and the interesting part is, like, it comes back to the same question I asked myself, like, what's the actual goal? Like, for some people, financial freedom is the goal. Some people dream of, it's passive income. Everybody I've talked to is like, property isn't very passive income. And whatever is glamorized as, and if somebody tells you that it's passive income, then most likely they're trying to sell you trading. That's my view on it. That doesn't mean it's taxing. It doesn't mean it's horrible. It doesn't mean it's something else. It's a business like everything else. And my view on it is, like, business requires work, business requires dedication, and business requires that you do it, and business requires you listen, you act, and you take decisions. So, those are the things. So it's like, if people are telling you, it's easy income and this stuff here, then guess what? They're trying to sell you a training course. Very simple. But that said, I mean, like, you guys started in your 20s, and where are you now? I mean, like, we talk about a decade,
Yeah.
So
we both obviously started right at the bottom of the chain, if you like, as training negotiators, and just worked our way up over the years within the firms that we worked for. And then individually, we had our own companies. I had an estate agent right in the heart of the town centre, selling properties. Tonya had a property management company where she would manage lots of buy-to-lets and house shares, house of multiple occupancies, student lets, etc. And then Tonya merged her company when she had her son. I sold my company when I had my son. We let the dust settle a little bit, and then we've now joined forces. So right towards the end of our game, if you like, we've decided to kind of join forces and start again, selling properties. We only do selling now because that's what we really love. We do like, obviously, the buy-to-let sector and stuff, but on a personal level, we'd rather do that for ourselves rather than for clients. And selling houses is what we absolutely adore to do. So yeah, we've joined forces. We're now selling properties, and it's more of a I'd guess, we tend to say it's more of like an American style of selling. So we like to say that we're personal property agents. So you're selling your property with us, not an agency. It's just a very personal, hands-on, thorough service that we pride ourselves on. And so it's been great so far, hasn't it?
Yeah, really enjoyed, and it's given us although we've started a new business, which a lot of people have maybe thought we're crazy doing
in a pandemic.
And in a pandemic, it's actually it's been nice. It's been a breath of fresh air compared to what we've done in the past, which has been very stressful, very full on, very intense businesses. This is the nice part of the business.
Yeah, and I think as well, because the pandemic has taught people, so, you know, estate agency can be very old school and old fashioned. You don't need a massive office in the town centre that costs tens of thousands of pounds to run a year, which you as the client will be paying for. We are online, we do a lot from home, but actually our clients get a hell of a lot more out of us. They don't pay as much than what they would using one of the kind of the mainstream household names, if you like. And I think clients have realised actually we don't need to do that anymore. When do I ever drive into town to see my agent? You know, they'd rather be able to just pick the phone up,
isn't it? Trying to get into that.
But you also don't have the same cost of having high street rents and every, you know, like you don't have the same cost. You can offer a different package. I mean, you know, I think.
Yeah, I think we can say that to our client. Like, we've been there, we've done it, we've had the office presence. The only benefit that has is, you know, to us having an office that everyone can get to, but the cost is then passed over to our clients. So we've been there and done it, and we just think this is such a better way of selling. We would much rather use a person, an agent, to sell a home for us.
An experienced one as well, to add to that, because, you know, when you're using an estate agent, you're not using the company director's not dealing with your property that's been in property for 20 years.
They're playing golf in Spain.
They're playing golf in Spain. You know, with us, you are actually getting someone that, between the two of us, we kind of know all areas of property, whether you're looking to buy an investment property, a HMO, a home, you know, whatever it is you're trying to buy, we've got experience in all areas. It's very unlikely you'll get that from a traditional estate agency.
I mean, this is so fascinating to hear, because it's so refreshing, because it's not the usual buy to flip, you know, which we can all have our opinions about. You know, like it can be fun, but it's not necessarily, you know, and it's a gamble. But
yes.
I think you have some of the same passions that I have with when I created fantastic services. Like we started with the end of tenancy cleaning. Now we have some advanced after builders cleaning, which is like what I call, we make a home. You know how it is after builders, you know, the cement everywhere on the windows, and it's like a special deep clean that has cement removals. This stuff here, it takes it from the drains, it makes it shine. And it's the same in some of the property makeovers we do, like how much it matters just to jet wash the patio before you sell it. Like, and that's some of the things that we're getting so much into. And it's one of the things where it's like, I personally, I love gardening, and then plants is my favorite. This stuff here, and gardening has always been a big part of it. But the cleaning part, but when I saw that part of the cleaning, which I didn't know because it wasn't something I'd done before, and then I got involved in seeing like what can you actually repair to make things just look bam, right? Yeah. And that was and that's it. So, and I guess you guys have a ton of strategies on the actual sale of how to, you know, get the best value out of it, but also how to sell faster if that's the stuff. If the location is one of those things. So I guess you guys have a ton of strategies about this stuff. So that's super fascinating to hear. And it's like, wow, it's like so much energy in this. So it's like you're getting a duo here who's going to be selling the property.
We're quite big on presenting your property for a sale, and we definitely help our clients, don't we? And
I think that's something they get from us,
and tweaks
and that they wouldn't normally get. Maybe, you know, we will go in and we're very honest. We're known for being honest, and we would tell a client, look, yeah, you know, you could get this price, but you could get this price if you just did the basics.
Yeah,
you know,
it could be a beautiful cottage, but their front door is rotten and it's fallen apart. Let's paint that front door, because that is your entry point. That's the first thing people are going to look at and be like, wow. So, you know, for us, we're very much on the same page.
It's a £150 job, right? It's maximum. You know, like a good door repair and this stuff here. It's like £150 job. It's like that.
Yeah, you don't have to spend hundreds, and that's something we're really big on. It's basic things that you probably think, oh, I don't really need to do that. But yes, you do. It costs a couple of £100, and it's going to make all the difference.
And it's the same for lettings and sales as well. It works in both industries, because if you're selling a home, you'll be ahead of the competition if it's presented well. You'll attract obviously the viewers. When you're letting a home, you generally, I believe, attract better quality tenants if you have a better start than you would if your property's falling apart and ropey. Maybe you're going to get someone that's not got the highest of standards, that aren't, you know, isn't going to particularly want to maintain a nice property. So I always believe, make sure your property looks as perfect as it can be to start off with. You know, you starting on the right foot, you get the right tenant through the door,
standard, aren't you?
setting a standard, and also you can determine, you know, with your inventory, start from finish a lot better, can't you? If you've got a clean slate, you know exactly where the wear and tear is, and you can determine damage easier. So it's just all things that it has a knock-on effect.
Well, I mean, there's a strategy called the broken window strategy, which was also, I think it was one of the mayors of New York who had this thing where if there's graffiti on a train, they would take that train out within 30 minutes of the train cart out within 30 minutes, because they found that the graffiti led to a broken window, or the broken window led to graffiti. That meant nobody cares about it, right? So the moment you stop caring, then that led to, oh, there's nobody watching, we can deal drugs here. That led to crime. That led to X amount of things. So it's like, you know, we called it the no bump in the road policy in our company. It was like we had to, in order to increase quality, we looked at the same thing as like, if we didn't care whether we, you know, ironed the shirt or whether they'd done their uniform and so forth, that quickly led to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Mm-hmm. So it was the same. But that idea of the broken window concept, so I fully agree with you on that. On lettings, it's like if they'd skipped on the end of tenancy clean, you come in and it's like it's clean, but it's not clean. The oven's still dirty inside, and like it hasn't been steam cleaned. The fridge is still, it's been wiped, but it hasn't been. You know, I mean, I can tell you the difference between clean and clean and clean. You know, how long is a piece of string? You know, and it goes up to the moon, and this on here on the levels of it, and disinfection. And it's like when you come into that, the experience of that, the next step, you go like, oh well, I haven't experienced this, and you know what? The landlord doesn't care, and if the landlord doesn't care, I don't care, right? And it's so instant, and you will see the cost of doing it right the first time versus like doing that, and you've got the experience to sell. It's really refreshing to hear, because I often have that debate when we're talking about, oh, but an end of tenancy cleaning is a little bit expensive. Yeah, that's because it's a real end of tenancy cleaning. It's not just a wipe down. You know, it's like it's the oven, it's the windows, it's the descaling of XYZ, it's the, you know, like everything on the bathroom and making shiny. It's like it's the same as after builders. Why is it so expensive? Because it's a deep clean. You know, it's more.
No, we think it should just be standard. You know, it should be like a you know, an industry standard that every home has to be professionally deep cleaned between tenancies. And you know, landlords can moan all they like, but
I remember as well, the landlord can only pay for that once.
Yeah, but even if they didn't, I believe as a landlord, it's something you should be doing. You know, and I would do it even if I couldn't. If my tenant didn't do it, for instance, I would still do it, because I think, like what you're saying, you'll either get a tenant that moves in that doesn't think, oh, the landlord don't care, I can do what I want here, or you're going to put a really good tenant's back up. That's the first thing you're going to do, and it sets the mood for a bad tenancy after that, I think. So and how you maximize return is by keeping it, right? Because we know the advertising cost and everything else. I mean, on that note, right? Like the two of you have two different strategies, and it was quite interesting because your passion now is in the selling of the property, but one was more interested in, I don't know, was it Tonya was more interested in HMOs and Rea, and I wanted to break into that because I completely agree with you on this stuff here. Like, start the tenancy right, do it right, make sure that the keys are handed over properly, and it's like, you know, you don't give them a dirty car, you don't give them a dirty home, right? You don't give them that, and then they move in, and you know, I know how quickly you're going to think, oh no, right? I have a lot of clients who call in and it's like, well, they had done the end of tenancy, but can we do a pre-tenancy clean where the clients call in themselves because like the sofa wasn't deep cleaned, the sofa wasn't steam cleaned, right? And I'm like, well, if I'm moving in, I've rented a lot in my years in London, that's for sure, because buying was very expensive. It was very hard to get in on the property ladder. But so I know what it was like, and the difference between someone who'd actually done it, you felt you walked into a home that was ready for you like that. You'd stay there for 2 years or you'd stay there longer, but you also cared about the things. It's like, oh, well, it's like, I'll just this
I think
one
here. Isn't it? When I've recently rented a property. I do own homes and my own home, but I rented a property to get my son into the school, and I walked through the door and I just burst out crying. It was absolutely filthy, riddled. I mean, they hadn't done anything, and I could not believe the way this agency had given me this property. I had a newborn baby, and I just said, there's absolutely no way I'm moving into this house like this. You need to get it sorted. Yeah. But it just, like you're saying, it's like buying a new...
Yeah, did they do it? Because I have so many customers where the agency doesn't want to pay for it and this stuff here. I mean, you know,
they did do it. did do it. Luckily, they arranged the clean. It still wasn't. It was a spring clean that they classed it as, and it wasn't exactly what I would want. And actually, it did like we're saying, it started the tenancy off wrong, really bad, and it made me think actually they don't really care about this property, so why should I? But in terms of strategies, yes, me and Tonya and I might have different strategies, but we're very on the same page in terms of how you hand over a property. When our tenants move into one of our properties, the house is immaculate. There's a bottle of champagne on the side or a welcome gift, and we're always at the end of the phone if they need something. Recently one of my tenants was moaning that the door was stiff. Now, so most landlords would say, "Oh, go away, mate. It's a stiff door. It's not the end of the world." I got it sorted straight away because that stiff door was a problem for my tenant, and it might not have been a big deal in my eyes, but it is to them, and I want them to be happy. So,
and it's appreciating a good tenant as well. I mean, this is one of the reasons why we don't do it for other landlords anymore, because the amount of landlords you work for as an agent, your hands are tied, and we're quite proud people, and we've got high standards. If your landlord's saying he's not going to pay for something, what can you do?
Right in the middle.
Yeah, and it's just embarrassing. It got to the point where you're like embarrassed to rent these homes or work for these landlords. We have high standards, and we appreciate a good tenant. Just a couple of days ago, I had a situation in one of my HMOs where there was a leak coming through the ceiling. I think the trap had twisted or something had happened with the trap under the bath. One of the students works on site. He's come back. He said, "I've pulled the panel off. I've done the trap. The water was just sort of coming straight through and through the ceiling below, but it's all sorted now." I then sent him a John Lewis voucher as a thank you, because he didn't need to do that. And that saved me a call out. Some landlords wouldn't, I've worked with some landlords that wouldn't even say thank you, which is to me disgusting and appalling. But if you appreciate your tenants, I think you get a bit more back. It's just all give and take with tenants and landlords.
People might find it quite shocking because no other agents would, but in both of our times of running our agencies beforehand, we've both disinstructed landlords. So because they won't get the work done, and they we feel like their property is not up to standard, and we'll probably talk about this later about property standards. We've disinstructed agents and said, look, we're not prepared to have your property on our portfolio, and we're not prepared to be your managing agent. And
we've got a conscience, and we just think, that was our kids or us. We can't sleep at night sometimes. I had one HMO landlord who had 54 rooms of his in Chelmsford. So collectively, that was a big chunk of money coming into me each month and letting fees. And I disinstructed him in the end, because it gets to the point where it's like, we're just too proud. It's not all about the money and what we earn.
I'm really impressed with how you're thinking on this stuff here, because I also think that you got loyalty. Like one of the things that we talked a little bit about sustainability as well. Do you feel that there is by doing these things, right? Do you feel one is your conscience, right? The other fun is like, I don't get inundated with phone calls of doing a bad job. We run a company where we do thousands of jobs a day. Of course, something's going to go wrong. Once in a while, my message box gets full up. We didn't turn up, but things happen, right? And it's like, we never set out to be perfect, but we set out to be the best there is. And it happens, right? And we've seen that the number of recommendations have far outweighed the cost of doing these things. And that's kind of why we sustained it versus, anybody can spend 20 million on marketing of a company, where we sustained it. And yes, we don't always get it right. And I'm pretty sure there's listeners and viewers who said, like, Rune, you guys didn't do X, Y, Z. And I was like, yes, I apologize for that. It doesn't always work. It's not always possible to do the perfect. And I bet everybody's had experiences where, that didn't work out, or that tenancy didn't work out. It happens, right? You can never be perfect, right? If you try that, then good luck in life. But you can be as good as you are, and you can be as conscious about what you are. Do you feel that there's a benefit to being that kind of way? Because I know that a lot of landlords out there and a lot of property developers and a lot of sales guys are like, well, it's just about selling. Let's sell, sell, sell. And I think, to me, that's kind of one of the things that's happening to society all over, just like schools, just like everything else. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to leave this planet, we've all got kids. It's like, if I'm going to leave this planet or like spend more time, it's like, I've got a duty to at least try. That's my view. But do you also, because we had a lot of debate internally about this stuff of whether that was actually worth it. And do you know what? It can't see the full numbers, but I can see that, yes, we are there, and we are getting the referrals, we are getting the recommendations, we are getting the people referring this stuff here, and it's starting to work. but it was a big decision to go from that to the other. I mean,
yeah, I think for us, it's the difference between longevity and not. You know, you either want a company that's going to last the test of time, or you want to be in it for a quick buck. And you know, people have said to us before, and we've known other agents that have, you know, playing golf in Spain, and you know, they've got the fancy home and stuff because they've made a lot of money from being ruthless. But it depends on whether you're morally, you know, you've got morals, and you know, for us, it's always been, you know, don't make a problem become a bigger problem, and really that's what it comes down to. Let's just build up over time. Don't build it up. You know, we know people that have been ruthless that have just sold up, and it's probably because eventually all the bad service builds up and up and up, and it's just more complaints than you know, praise, and it gets too much, and they sell up. But you know, for us, it's about just longevity, providing a good service,
being good people as well. I think we've just got like too much of a conscience for like being ruthless. We're just not that way inclined, and I think, you know, we would go to bed at night a lot happier knowing we've been good landlords and looked after our tenants than we would, you know, raking the money in, being horrible. So,
but my sort of viewpoint is that like you're actually not losing on it.
No,
right? Because and this is my point, right? You're actually not losing on it, and not even financially not losing on it, because one thing is you're not wasting your time dealing with problems, right?
Yeah,
that's one thing. Like I could, you know, we could waste more time on customer service. We could be a lot more in this stuff here. You're not wasting your time on your problems. You're not wasting the stuff here, which means you can sleep at night, which means you can actually take the decisions to make the next move in the business. And I think that's super important. So I think you are not losing out on it. I think it feels like it. I think way too many people think right here, that's what in front of me, and then they don't see the longevity of it. And I think it's so refreshing to hear this. You know, it's not an easy place to be either, because you have to preempt the things, but then once you're rolling with it, it's like a lot of things goes easier. I mean, there's a couple of books where it's like you know, quality without the tears, right? It starts from the top. It's like quality comes from a good product, not from what you do in customer service. Like, and all the results in customer service comes from the stop of, have you designed the product right on price, and are you doing the right things? So, and then you then the last saying is that quality is free, where it actually comes down to this. So I think it's a harder one to say. It's definitely meant we didn't grow as fast, and I think you guys could have, you know, you could probably, and you know that you could probably have grown even faster on it. You know, however, do you know what? You have something that you're proud of. Not only that, you now have the moves to make the next step. And on that, it's like, what's the next step for you guys? Where are you taking this? Because you're still very young. It's like
we're quite chilled at the minute. I mean, we are, you know, we always have gone with the motto that, you know, slow and steady wins the race. We're not moving at 1,000 miles per hour. We have children now. We work from home. We're really just enjoying the job that we do. We don't want hundreds of clients at a time. We want to be able to really dedicate ourselves to, you know, a handful at a time. Tonya usually deals with 5. I might deal with 5. And it's just about building the Victoria Louise brand now, and trying to get clients to see that they don't need an estate agency. They just need a really good estate agent, which hopefully is us. And it's just getting them to think more in more of an American way, if you like, because they all use individuals to sell their homes. So it's just really trying to get that across now,
and to break the mold as well. I think that people are maybe set in their ways a little bit here and a bit scared to use a different way of selling, and you know, for them the safe bet is to go with an estate agents. But I think if they gave us a try, they'd never look back. They wouldn't look back, and I think they just think, why didn't we do this sooner? Because the service we give, like, you know, I really do believe is better than any sort of estate agent can offer as a whole.
No, but I mean, we work with estate agents and landlords, so I know the differences. Like, if I was a startup investor, I'd say like, well, how is your stuff scalable? You know, and it's like, well, not everything has to be scalable, right? Seth Godin wrote the nice one is small is a new big. You know, and it seems like you've really embraced that and done a great business out of that. And you know, I mean, I always like, there's one thing that you can never knock on a business, right? And you can never knock on a business owners if they're enjoying it. Right? And if they're proud of what they do, you can never knock on that. It's like I can't remember which book it was I read, where it's just like, who cares if you make the biggest business of the world if you're really proud of what you do?
Yeah.
Like what's the point? I think it was in the hard truth about the hard thing about hard things, or the hard truth about hard things.
Sir Richard Branson's book, I think you might be referring to.
He
exact sentence to me a couple of weeks ago. He's reading it at the moment. I can't remember the exact title of the book, but I know where you're getting at with that.
And we both had businesses where we earned more money and we were, earning a lot.
We were miserable.
So miserable. Our anxiety's through the roof. We've got no quality of time, like no time quality, because we're just in the office all the time. Feel like a bad parent, and ultimately that's our number one, is being good parents. That comes first. That means we sleep at night, and then the business comes afterwards. But when we had
if it's
more
all
money
working, then everyone's happy, aren't they?
Exactly. And now we've luckily been able to put ourselves in a position now where we don't work as much and we enjoy what we do, and it just feels so much better. And I think that shows in the service that we provide, and our customers can really feel and see how enthusiastic we are about property and what we do.
No, I mean, I think it's an amazing journey you've been on as well, and I think it's refreshing to hear in property. I hear a lot. I mean, and you're making the same about anxiety, FOMO. I find those are keywords in property quite a lot, and it's like, well, FOMO of not selling now, or FOMO of not being in the market now, and everything else. And it's like, listen, I mean, chill out and understand where you're at and getting in. I mean, like, do you think you'd be able to do where you are now? I mean, I don't know how big your portfolio is, but do you think you'd be able to do that now? If you started now with, let's say, you'd probably need a lot more cash to begin with than you did in the days. Do you think that'd be the same? Do you think that, I mean, like, you've been at it for more than a decade.
Can start now.
You can. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that everybody watches these shows and they want to be a high roller straight away. And I can speak for myself. I started very small, like really super, super small, with the tiniest little property. And when we go back to portfolio, I only started investing, maybe 5 years ago. So I was quite late to the game. But we always say, you don't need to have a massive, massive property. Just have 2 or 3 little ones. That you kind of buy over time, and then you're sitting on a nice little portfolio.
And start young. I think we would both do that now. Like,
I wish we'd started sooner.
Yeah, I wish we'd started sooner. I mean, we know people that are living at home with their mum and dad, paying a couple of £100 a month to mum and dad, £500 a month for their car. You're like, well, hold on a minute, get rid of that car that you don't need. That, you could save a deposit, get a studio flat. You don't have to live in it. And
but this is where it goes back to education.
Exactly, I was going to bring that back.
Somebody come to school, and me and Tonya were sitting in a class, and when you leave school, all you've got to do is save this amount per month, and then in 5 years you will have X, and then you can use X to buy this. It would have just all made so much more sense. I think that is where it's got to start.
Yeah, and also I think this thing where we feel like we've got to get on the ladder, move out quick, you don't need to. You can do it the other way round. Buy a property, stay at home with mum and dad because they're charging you cheap rent. Stay at home with them. Get a buy-to-let property. There you go. You're on the ladder, and
build a bit of equity.
Yeah, build some money up, make a bit of money. I was just talking to someone recently who has a car. They pay about £400 a month for. They pay £200 to their mum for rent. And we worked out that within a year, she could buy this studio flat, still live at home with mum and dad, and earn about £350 a month in profit. She couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe it when we did all the figures. It is achievable. Like Rea said, you've just got to start small and not be disheartened by these people that are doing it big and fast, because in reality, that's not real. It's not real. You've got to start small and build it up.
I think this thing about, you're going to make 100,000 a year on this stuff here, and it's like you're going to be doing that within 12 months. It's going to be like passive income, and I was like, God, like please, like let's be real about this stuff here. I spent, I didn't buy a property until I was 33. I never bought one, and it's like, first of all, it was like, I'm from Denmark, which meant property was like a weird one, because if you make money on a property, you're not, the tax just eats it, so it doesn't matter. There's not real, but then I never looked at the longevity of it and the idea of compounding value and the long term of it. But going back to the school about the appreciating and depreciating asset of like a car is a depreciating asset. You buy it or you lease it or whatever you do, it's just money out the window. There's no value from it versus so I think that's the key with it. And it's like you can get quite far with these things. And I think also it's like, oh well, I wanted that kind of house, because I watch the same TV shows, right? Okay, well, grand designs, here we go, like, oh, that's kind of how, yeah, well, do you know what? Yeah, that's not what I'm going to be able to afford for the first times and the first 5 times and 10 times,
Exactly, and you can still make. I mean, I can remember the first property I bought. Most people are like, oh, but I made 45 grand on that property in 2 years. Yeah. In equity. How else can you do that when you're young? How can you save that kind of money? You can't. So even if you get just a really small, basic little studio apartment or anything, and just sit on it, for a year or two, generate some money, equity, and then move on to the next one. I think it's such a shame they don't teach us.
It's really easy as well. Like that part of the business of property is easy if you can just focus and dedicate yourself to saving and managing your money right. It's actually easy. That strategy is easy, getting on the property ladder. It's just mindset, isn't it? Mindset and self-control.
Well, you make it sound easy. It's I think there's also a psychological barrier to it. It's like there's a psychological barrier to it. It's like I think we're conditioned to thinking about that, and especially if you're not, as I said, exposed to it. I had a really good conversation with someone whose family were property developers, like for the whole thing, and he's also very, very young and got very far by the age of 20. Had civil property by the age of 20. Was making a killing on it, and it was very interesting to see like how when you learned it was like, oh well, that's easy. It's not so easy for everyone, and I think a lot of people don't see that step and see that what is the first step, and it's like it's daunting. I mean, as I said, like the first thing you go into the stamp duty and you go into the idea of starting out in property. It's like, well, the stamp duty, okay, I got to pay that, and then I got to pay the lawyers, and I got to pay the agencies, then I got to pay these things and so many things. I mean, like, and I remember very clearly. I mean, it's like I think I made at least 50% on the property in less than 12 months on the first one, and I was like, oh, it's zone 1 London, right? But it's that was where I started, right? So so of course those prices are not going up at the same speed, but I would have made 780% if I kept it for more than 15 years, right? And that's a very high return, that's unique stuff in it. But that also said, it's like you said something about that it's quite easy to save that stuff here. I think what we get indoctrinated when we hear this stuff, and then you've got a couple of other podcasts there with Josh, for example, just kicking about this stuff about the gearing of it and the house of cards of like how much are you leverage, how much you debt into it. Because I think a lot of them, like the pushing and the training we're doing is like bam, 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 get remortgage, bam, 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 bam. And I think, take it in your pace. That's one of the things, because it's like I like, it sounds like you got your sound foundation for this, and I don't, as I said, I think you're doing an incredible job on it.
And not to compare yourself to others as well, because we are all in different stages. Even we are. Sometimes we'll go, oh, one year Rea's in a different position to me, and then it rotates. And I was talking to a developer recently. I've recently drawn some money out of some property, and I'm sitting on this money trying to buy something, and I'm getting frustrated because I can't get in the market, and it's driving me insane. And he said to me, oh, you just got to go for it. Just go for it and hope for the best. You win some, you lose some. That is easy for someone to say who's a multimillionaire, which he is. And he's got, his risk is spread massively across lots of property. And for him to potentially lose 300 grand is nothing off his shoulder. So everyone is in different situations. For someone that's saved for maybe 5 years for 50 grand, that money's precious. It's really precious, and it's not so easy to just dive in sometimes. So everyone is at different stages, levels, and has different amounts of money that they're prepared to risk. So we always say, just don't compare yourself to others. Just do your own thing.
I think that's the amazing advice to end on as well. I mean, Tonya, Rea, it's been really, really refreshing talking to you I really like your style about this, the consciousness of it, and also the idea about the longevity. I will, I'll make a bet on it in you guys that you guys will do incredibly well with it. Maybe it's not going to reach the billions, but you'll do incredibly well with it because you're going to be enjoying it and you're going to be proud of what you do. And I really take my head off for that and think that you've done really well with it. How do people find out more about you guys? Should they follow you LinkedIn, Instagram? Where do they find out more about you?
We can follow all our property ventures and everything we get up to on our Instagram, which is @officialpropertytwins. We also have a website, which is officialpropertytwins.com. So yeah, we tend to put everything that we do property-wise on our Instagram, and we're always available if anybody wants any tips or has got a question about property. Just fire it across, and we're always able to kind of give our advice and our opinion on things.
No, thank you so much for this refreshing talk. I'm really happy it wasn't about how to scale enormously fast, but it's also about how to build a sustainable, in my eyes, and a good property business. So thank you so much for being part.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, for the listeners, Property Expert Podcast, just type in on Google, it'll come up as #1, Property Experts Podcast. You can find us on all the usual ones, Spotify, Apple, and iTunes, and whatever there is on it here. Please click like, and on the website of Fantastic Services, you can also see the podcast. So thank you so much for this, and I look forward to following your adventures on Instagram and seeing what you get up to next.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
I gotta celebrate life, I get excited about good times.